Is it live?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't get the notification.
Yeah, let me just make sure. It's a little bit of a, yeah, it says it's going.
Oh, oh, yeah, there we go. Okay. Awesome. Well, hello, ladies. Hope you guys are doing well. So today I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We are going to be talking about PCOS and all of the things that your doctor may not be telling you. Can you see it for me?
Let me make sure. Let me just check from my end here. Yes, I can see your screen. You're good.
Let me present. There we go. Okay. Oh, let's do something. Okay, there we go. All right, so the truth about PCOS, what your doctor may not tell you, and some truths behind all of the things. So, first of all, what is PCOS? PCOS is polycystic ovary syndrome. It is estimated that 1 in 10 women are diagnosed with PCOS. 50 to 60% of those that are diagnosed with PCOS are overweight. And PCOS diagnoses are raising significantly, whether or not that is because of, how they are, how we are checking for PCOS, if there's just more awareness behind it. I also think sometimes it's very overdiagnosed as well. Sometimes doctors will just like see a cyst on your ovary and they're like, you have PCOS, when in reality, it's like, it's an occasional cyst here or there, not necessarily something that warrants like this big scary diagnosis. And I see a lot of women who are like, they get diagnosed with this and then, it's a panic thing. I'm never going to be able to have kids. Like it, oh my God, and it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be scary. There's ways that you can actually heal your body, which is incredible. So a little bit about why this is so personal to me. So I was diagnosed with PCOS when I was 20. I throughout my teen years and throughout college, I dealt with extreme disordered eating. It ranged from different variations of that, but definitely was, not healthy, was, would go multiple days sometimes without eating and then, eat all the things all of a sudden, like just very, very terrible body image, all the things. I always struggled with my periods when I was a teenager, always had, really heavy periods or irregular periods. And then when I was in high school, I started developing like debilitating cysts on my ovaries. I actually had like multiple cysts that ruptured and like I ended up in the emergency room, which is like the worst pain I have ever felt. And I have shoved a baby out of me. Um, so anyway, I was dealing with that. When I was in high school, they put me on birth control to regulate my cycle and manage PCOS, which we'll talk more about as we dive into all the things. And then when I was 20, I was officially diagnosed with PCOS. Somehow I still managed to get pregnant at 22. They had told me that that would probably be very, very challenging, but it was not. And that was definitely more of an accident, but a very good accident. And then, like many of you probably experienced, after you have a baby, you go to your 6 week checkup, and you're basically told that your only option is to go on birth control of some sort. Like, for whatever reason, they don't even give you the option to say no, which is crazy to me. When our hormones are already so wackadoo after having children, and we do birth control and suppress our natural hormone production. So anyway, I opted for an IUD right after I had my daughter. So I had that IUD for a while, and then in 2020, I started experiencing like just a lot of weird stuff was going on with my body, like lots of histamine reactions. At one point, like my skin was like all like flaky and I had like these splotches all over me. And I was just like super inflamed, super puffy all the time. Obviously, it was 2020. It was a weird year anyway, so maybe some of that was contributing, you know. But at this time, I had started my online nutrition coaching business, and I was working with some business mentors, and they had a podcast. And at one point, they brought Dr. Jillian Brighton onto the podcast, and she was talking about birth control and PCOS and like all of the things. And this is kind of what really started my journey throughout holistic health, because I was like, okay, screw this IUD, we're getting this out. Obviously, this is doing me no favors. And then we're going to figure out the PCOS stuff and figure out why that is an issue. I don't, because I'm mind blown. I don't have to live like this. This is amazing. So I fought with my doctors. They will always tell you, like, no, you should keep the IUD. Like, and they'll try to say, no, it is your body. And so I looked my doctor dead in the face and I was like, this is my body. I want this thing out of me. Take it out now. And then I did a birth control detox. I did Dr. Jillian Brighton's, what she recommends for that. More of a strict diet and lots of things to support the body. And then that's kind of what started me down the functional health rabbit hole as I healed my body. I don't know why that's on there twice. So some lies that you have been told about PCOS if you were diagnosed. That one is that you will live with PCOS forever. Two, birth control will help regulate your hormones. You are insulin resistant because you have PCOS, and metformin is the only way to fix insulin resistance.
Wait, that's not true, Ashley?
Hey, hold on. Let me talk about it. So PCOS can actually be managed naturally, and even completely reversed, so that it has very little or no impact on your life. I'm living, walking proof of that. Birth control will suppress your symptoms, maybe. Maybe it may also cause more symptoms down the road, but birth control does not regulate your hormones. It actually suppresses your natural hormone production. Insulin resistance is not caused by PCOS. You probably were insulin resistant before you were diagnosed with PCOS, and that's actually what is driving the PCOS symptoms. And then the fact that doctors are not talking about your diet when it comes to insulin resistance and only jumping to things like metformin or Ozempic is quite literal insanity, because insulin resistance requires, if you want to reverse that, it requires dialing in the diet. So let's dive into some symptoms of PCOS. And people will sometimes not have all of these symptoms. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a thing, but these are like the most common symptoms that we see. Irregular periods. Sometimes they're really heavy. Sometimes you may not have them every month, or lots of like spotting or whatever. Just if they're wonky, it can be a sign of that. Abnormal hair growth, especially like on your face and stuff like that, can be a symptom of PCOS. And then lots of acne, obesity, darkening of the skin, like particularly under the arms, or like in your skin fold areas, that can indicate that PCOS may be a thing. Obviously, cysts on the ovaries can be an indicator of PCOS. If your hair is thinning on your head, that can also indicate that. And then infertility as well. A lot of people with PCOS do struggle to get pregnant. It makes it a little bit harder, and it's not impossible. If you do the things and get to the root of PCOS, you can very well get pregnant and have a healthy pregnancy as well. So a lot of people do not know this, but there are actually 4 different kinds of PCOS. There's 4 different types. They're all driven by something kind of different, but they're all kind of similar as well. So we've got insulin-resistant PCOS, we've got adrenal PCOS, we have post-pill PCOS, and we have inflammatory PCOS. So we're going to dive into all of those. All right, so insulin-resistant PCOS. This is the most common kind of PCOS. This is probably 70% of PCOS cases are often due to insulin resistance. So what is insulin resistance? This basically means that the body cells don't respond properly to insulin, which makes it difficult for glucose to enter the cells and leads to higher blood sugar levels. So insulin resistance can stimulate the ovaries to produce more androgens. Your androgens are like your testosterone, DHEA, those hormones. And insulin resistance can interfere with the development of your ovarian follicles, causing them to stall out, leading to more polycystic ovaries. So if you have ever had an ultrasound and you have like a bunch of cysts on your ovaries, this is likely what might be happening there. Um, it can be linked back to the insulin resistance. They're not just showing up just because. And then go ahead.
Yeah, and so many women like they'll have a thermography or an ultrasound and they might see cystic breasts or cystic ovaries. And I
Mhm.
feel like both of those areas of the body are really sensitive to hormone imbalances like this and insulin resistance and different things like that. We also look at the 16-OH being elevated on the Dutch can contribute to like cysts and overgrowths and stuff, and that can be more of a poor detoxification of hormones. So we definitely like there's different factors that we would consider when we're looking at someone with cysts. We've got to look at blood sugar and insulin. We've got to look at how your hormones are being processed because there can be more than one thing going on with that.
Right. Yeah. The other issue with insulin resistance is it causes more weight gain, which then
Mhm.
worsens insulin resistance. So it's just like this vicious circle. Like you gotta hop off the circle at some point so that you can get it under control. Um, so what do we do about insulin resistant PCOS? The first is going to be to test all the hormones, preferably on day 21 of the cycle, as well as testing, your glucose markers, fasting glucose, insulin, hemoglobin A1C to see what is going on there. When we're dealing with insulin resistance, balancing your blood sugar is like one of your biggest jobs in the entire world. Like you cannot reverse insulin resistant PCOS if you do not balance your blood sugar with your diet. Like it doesn't matter what you take. It really doesn't. It doesn't matter what you take. All of the medicine in the world will not fix a crappy diet. So high protein breakfast first thing in the morning is crucial when it comes to insulin resistance. No caffeine before food. Caffeine is going to spike that blood sugar, which is going to, put you on the blood sugar roller coaster.
And
Not
that's what we all love to do. We all love to wake up and have a cup of coffee
like
before
I'm
we do
guilty of it
anything
too.
else.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Keeping really well balanced meals with protein, fats, carbs, and fiber will help to stabilize blood sugar. No naked carbs. So carbohydrates are not the enemy. You like people think, oh, I'm insulin resistant. I can't have carbs. No, that's not true. You can. Your body still needs carbs, but you don't want to just be like chowing down on bread with nothing else, to balance it out because that is going to cause that blood sugar spike. So we want to make sure that anytime we're eating carbs, we're pairing that with a meal. We're pairing that with protein, fats, and fiber. And then, so this is a little trick that I use. So also a really great trick just if you're dieting in general. But when you're actually eating your meals, you can actually support blood sugar better if you eat your veggies first and then your protein and then your carbs and fats. So that can actually help mitigate any of those blood sugar spikes from the carbs. The other thing too, it's like a great diet hack because you start to fill up on veggies, you fill up on your protein, you're less likely to overeat on those foods that are more enjoyable. So
Hmm.
kind of a good little trick there. And then supplementation like inositol or berberine can also be helpful if you take those with meals to kind of stabilize blood sugar as well. All right, then we've got post pill PCOS. So basically, so when you're taking birth control pills, you are taking synthetic progestin. It's not progesterone. Okay. So when you come off of the pill, basically like your body's throwing a party because it can finally do what it was intended to do. And it can cause a big surge in androgens, causing those PCOS symptoms. So a lot of times it takes some time to regulate all of those things. I want you to keep this in mind. And yes, this is me yelling at you. We cannot shut off our body's natural functions and expect there to not be consequences. There's so many people like so many people, doctors that'll say like, oh, there's no danger to birth control. And yeah, like it may not kill you, but we cannot pretend that suppressing our body's natural hormone production or not having a period for 10 years, which is what our bodies were designed to do, we cannot pretend that that doesn't have consequences. And there's other things that that can mess up. It can, birth control can cause issues with other hormones as well, like estrogen dominance or whatever. But this is just one of them. This is just one example is post-pill PCOS.
And one thing that I think has been really good about the movement with menopause and educating women on like hormone therapy and bioidentical versus synthetic, I'm hoping like that will rub off even more in the health space, the medical
Mhm.
space about birth control because now like I feel like there's more research on the health impacts of estrogen and progesterone and testosterone for women
Yeah.
and beyond having a baby. Like this is the thing, like I feel like a lot of young women get on the pill for different reasons because their cycles are really difficult because they have acne, because they have, whatever XYZ, and it becomes this like all catching, solution somehow. And thankfully, like I feel like women, especially like in the menopause circle, are starting to realize like, oh, hormones are protecting us.
Mhm.
They're good for our immune system. They're good for our heart health. They're good for our inflammation. Like they're good for our, like it impacts our gut. Like there's so many things. And so when we manhandle the body, and think that we're like outsmarting it. It's like it always backfires when we're trying to just like force an outcome because anytime your body is symptomatic or struggling, it's literally just communicating with you that it needs something better, it needs some improvement in some area. It doesn't want to be dramatic. It doesn't your body doesn't want to be dysregulated.
Mhm.
But like, yeah. So I know I'm on the soapbox with you on that one for
Well,
sure.
and it's not studied. Like honest to God, like I learned this weekend. Like I can't remember the actual percentages, but the female body is a million more times complex than the male body, right? But yet the majority of funding goes towards funding male, like everything's tested on men. Like we're not testing to see, how things are affecting women. Like it's all being looked at in men, not women who have super fluctuating hormones all the time,
Yep.
So it's
Yep.
and the other thing too with birth control is like they've tested for short periods of time. Nobody has really looked at the effects of birth control if used long term. They're like, oh yeah, we used, this person used birth control for 3 months and there were no negative effects on the body. Okay, but what about the person that's been using birth control for 10 years? That's where we're not studying it. That's where we're not.
Yeah. Yeah. And funding, you always have to look for who's funding it. They can throw
Mm-hmm,
out participants for different reasons in
mm-hmm.
studies so that their outcome looks better than what it really looks like.
Yeah,
Yeah, they can have a study they initially do 60 days and then symptoms and problems start in the 50-day range and so they shorten it to 40 days. Oh,
yeah,
look, there were no problems. So there's a
yeah,
lot of like adjustments you can make to a study to get the outcome that the company wants you to prove with that study,
yeah.
unfortunately.
So, anyway, thankfully, there are those of us in the functional health space that are, starting to educate about this so that women are not just reliant on what their doctor is saying. So anyway, off of that tangent, what do we do about it? So you do have to be patient if you are dealing with post-pill PCOS, because it does take some time for your body to try to regulate back to normal. Typically with my clients, I will have them wait 90 days after stopping birth control, or at least until they're having regular cycles again, because testing too soon, if you test right after, your body is trying to regulate, it's trying to do itself. Your body does have the ability to heal itself. Like your body has that innate ability. So we don't want to test right away because we want to let the body do what it knows how to do. But after like 90 days, then it's a great idea to go ahead and test and make sure that it's done what it needs and it doesn't need more support to get to that good balance. I think in these situations, a Dutch test might be preferable to see the hormone metabolites, since that tends to be more of an issue with PCOS. And then supporting the diet with, a good whole food diet can help the body, can give the body what it needs just to regulate quicker after coming off of birth control. Keep inflammation low, avoid all of the crappy foods, so that, your body is supported in order to heal. And then we have adrenal PCOS. So this is when cortisol is chronically elevated. So when we are super stressed, when we live in fight or flight, cortisol is chronically elevated. What happens is DHEA might rise because DHEA and cortisol play hand in hand together. So DHEA may rise in order to try to counterbalance cortisol. This can often cause us to be more androgen dominant. And cause some of those PCOS symptoms. Sometimes when DHEA is too high, then we see testosterone too high as well. Not always, but a lot of times that is the case. And so that can cause a lot of those PCOS symptoms as well. So what to do about that? A Dutch test, again, could be super helpful to see the metabolites and also to see the cortisol pattern, because a lot of times that's helpful to see, well, when is cortisol too high? If cortisol is elevating, in the afternoon or in the evening, there may be some chronic stress around that needs to be addressed in order to bring that pattern down. But obviously, lowering stress levels and learning how to regulate your nervous system is crucial when we're talking about this. It's very, very normal for us to go into fight or flight. That's our body's way of trying to keep us safe and protecting us. But what happens is we go into fight or flight and our nervous system is not adaptable. We don't know how to regulate back into that parasympathetic. And so then we live there. And I talk to so many women who it's like, oh my God, yeah, I just live in fight or flight. And it's like, okay, well, that's probably part of the reason that your cortisol is so high. The other thing is to sleep like it's your job. Your body cannot repair whenever you are not getting enough sleep. Anytime that we
Mhm.
don't sleep
You got to
enough.
say that multiple times to some clients.
Yes, exactly. When we're not
Like,
sleeping enough, you're going to have issues with cortisol. You can't regulate. And we all know too, like our nervous system is not as adaptable either if we're not getting enough sleep. I mean, when you like didn't sleep well one night and you wake up the next day and it's like,
and guess who's going to be more emotional and cranky and have a lot of cravings
mm-hmm,
for bad food the next day if you don't get your sleep? I'm just
mm-hmm,
saying.
mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then typically when cortisol is chronically high, I always recommend avoiding high intensity exercise. The last thing that you want to do when, you're already dealing with really high cortisol, is add in, like a HIIT workout, where your heart rate is elevated for a solid 30 minutes or whatever. And then, when your heart rate is elevated for a long time, what do you think happens to your cortisol? It shoots up too. And so then we're just like adding fuel to the fire. So typically with this, I would recommend more like strength training, even like some yoga or Pilates, like more low intensity stuff so that we're not elevating that cortisol. Most of the time strength training is okay because like your heart rate may elevate while you're lifting but then it comes down pretty quickly. But if you like, we're not running, we're not doing HIIT workouts. Like we're not doing any of that. Like, we got to keep the heart rate, pretty stable in order to avoid any more cortisol spikes there. And then avoid caffeine and alcohol. I see a lot of people, it's like, okay, I'm going to have the coffee in the morning so that I can, do all the things. And then Oh, and then we're spiking blood sugar too. So then we're, leading to insulin resistance. And then, but then we're so like wired and whatnot at the end of the day that it's like, okay, now I need a drink to unwind. So, you want to kind of get off of that and learn how to regulate the nervous system, so that you're not living in fight or flight, so that your cortisol is capable of coming down. Obviously, there's some supplements that can help, but I'm not going to tell you what they are because then everybody's going to run out and take them, and it may not be what your body needs. So don't just go blindly taking cortisol regulating supplements because the wrong ones can do more harm than good. Um, Anything else you want to add on that one?
I would just add, well, unless you're going to talk about this too, but whenever I see that there's like chronically elevated cortisol and that's like playing into the DHEA and the PCOS picture, some people they don't have that DHEA, they don't have the androgen, they don't have the PCOS,
Mhm.
but they do have the high cortisol. We see that all the time
Yeah.
too. And it can cause that weight loss resistance and anxiety and all this stuff. Well, we're always asking like, well, why is the cortisol high? Yes, it could be if you're drinking caffeine on an empty stomach. It could be if you're doing a HIIT workout. But some other things that I would add to this is like if you've got um, inflammatory gut situation or an autoimmune condition like Hashimoto's thyroid, like there's other things that can be causing
Yeah.
inflammation. Let's say
We're going to talk
maybe
about that
someone,
next. Yeah.
yes, okay, so you're about to get into that. And some
Hmm.
people it's like chronic allergies, like just anything that's going to bring your cortisol inflammatory reaction high is going to affect this too. So some people with, oh yeah, that's the next one. I'm sorry. I'm
No, you're
totally
good.
like jumping the gun here because
Let's
that's
go
the
to
next
it.
one, the other type.
Okay, so the other one is inflammatory PCOS. So this is when chronic inflammation causes the ovaries to
Yeah.
produce excess testosterone. So this isn't, it could cause elevated cortisol as well,
Yeah,
but
there can be some overlap.
Mhm.
Yeah. Hmm.
But chronic inflammation can cause the ovaries to produce excess testosterone. And this can cause headaches, joint pain, weight gain, skin issues. It's often linked to IBS. So
Hmm.
my ladies who it's like they've had tummy issues forever. They've always, struggled to go to the bathroom or whatever. Maybe they've been diagnosed with IBS and then later on they're diagnosed with PCOS. This is often where I'm looking and I'm going, well, what else is going on in the body? Because it may not just be PCOS. The PCOS may actually be a symptom of something going on in the gut. And so if we can get to the root of that, if we can look at the gut and figure out what's really going on there, a lot of times we can reverse PCOS. Um, Sometimes it
And you
takes
know,
it.
another thing, this is why it starts to get a little tricky for people to unravel their health on their own because it's like one thing leads to another thing leads to another
Mhm,
thing. Because even in this scenario, like let's say it's someone who has chronic gut issues, then they end up having chronic inflammation,
mhm.
then it affects their hormones. Well, guess what? It probably is also affecting the thyroid at that
Yeah,
point because when we start having these chronic stressors, and high cortisol, it suppresses your thyroid function too over time. So then it just compounds and gets a little bit more and more and more over the years. And so as much as we love like helping women at any age, like if we can help women when they're younger so that
yeah,
they don't develop more and more problems as they age, because it's just becomes so overwhelming by the time you're getting to menopause, then we're like, okay, let's roll out the laundry list of things we got to
yeah,
work on because it's
yeah.
all stacked up over the years.
Well, and I mean, yeah, I mean, and especially like with PCOS, if your hormones are out of whack going into menopause, like it's gonna make perimenopause really rough. And I tell people that all the time. I mean, I'm young, I've not gone through menopause, so I don't have personal experience with it, but I do know that it doesn't have to suck, but oftentimes the reason that it's so awful is because things were super out of whack going into it. And now it's just like, well, now things are trying to fluctuate, but they already were
Hmm.
not balanced and not happy. And so then we end up seeing just like this huge overflow of perimenopause symptoms,
Hmm.
and it's harder to get a balance. It's not impossible. There's still a ton you can do to balance things out during perimenopause and make it less miserable, but it does make it harder because, now we've got all of these hormone fluctuations as your body is, trying to lower estrogen production and all of that. But we're also coming from all of like the back history of all of these health issues. And so it just makes it a lot more challenging. So I would always encourage, like, if you haven't gone through menopause yet, like, and you are dealing with any kind of hormone issues, like, do the work, because it sets you up for success down the road. Or like, if your daughter is in her 20s and she's dealing with PCOS, or she's dealing with, any hormone issues, really, like, encourage her to do the work to set her body up for success for the future. Because unfortunately, like, I see a lot of women who, get a PCOS diagnosis, and then they get these cysts that get overgrown. And I mean, I've known women who were, I mean, even my own mother, like, she had a total hysterectomy before she was, I think she was 40, but she, I mean, still young, and then
Yeah.
uh, and then her body's in basically full blown menopause at that point, because she doesn't have any normal or doesn't have the regular hormone production. And so it makes it really, really hard. And it's like, well, how much of that, like, maybe we could have done more work so that we're
For
not
sure.
going to do something so drastic as having a hysterectomy. Like, almost had a partial hysterectomy when I was in my 20s, because I had a cyst that was so big. And like, thank God that I didn't, because, and thank God now I have the tools to be able to manage everything without,
Yeah. And sometimes like I have those conversations like when I'm going over thermography results and I see that the breast area doesn't look like it looks a little unhealthy. And I look at their history and I see they have history of heavy bleeding to the point where they had an
Mhm.
ablation or a hysterectomy and because they had fibroids and cysts and bleeding. And I'm like, this lady has been dealing with an imbalance for probably
Years.
decades at this
Yeah.
point. And no one's ever really helped her dive into those underlying imbalances and inflammatory issues. Like that should have been addressed back then, you know? It
Yeah.
just breaks my heart that like women aren't being informed and educated about why those things are happening and that it's not okay and it's not normal. And doing the ablation and doing the surgery removes that problem, but it
Right.
doesn't fix the root issue. So
Like,
that continues to harm her. In my opinion, like that's still going to harm you.
yeah. Like, you have insulin
So,
resistant PCOS, let's cut out some of your organs. Like, no, let's not cut out organs. Let's address the root cause of the issue. And, and unfortunately, like, that's the medical system. And I mean, we can't change that. And I feel so bad for people who have, gone that route, and now they're dealing with, all, more issues down the road because of that, and there's still plenty of things that you can do to support your body. And, Rebecca and I are
definitely.
here if that is
Definitely.
you. Yeah. We're not at
Yeah.
all, I mean, we're not at all trying to say that that was your fault. Unfortunately, that's just the medical system that we're in. It's like, okay, we are willing to do something as drastic as cutting out organs over a condition that could probably be managed with, diet and lifestyle changes and some supplementation.
Yeah. And some things like I recognize have gone too far or is really, really, I mean, some women are like straight up bleeding out and it's like it can become more of a medical
Yes,
problem. And I recognize
absolutely.
that. And so we can do what we can do for her health
Hmm.
afterwards too. But my whole point is like the procedure did not fix your health. So
Yeah,
like if you looking back, you know, you're past that, you don't have that problem anymore. But I try to help women recognize like that problem didn't go away. The symptom was removed physically,
hmm,
but the problem is still there and you're still at risk for hormonal, you know, cancers and like issues like
yeah,
that that obviously are like really important to address. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
That's my
absolutely.
whole tangent.
Oh, for sure. There's a lot of tangents I can go on.
I know.
So what to do about inflammatory PCOS? So anti-inflammatory diets can help significantly, getting rid of all of the inflammatory foods. If you're eating a bunch of processed foods, just a bunch of crap, like, it's gonna add fuel to the fire. We want to remove the stressors from the body. So Low inflammation foods are great. Address GI issues. I mean, really address any issues if your body's in an inflammatory state. But especially GI issues, if your gut is inflamed, your whole body's inflamed. Like that's just, you cannot, you can't lower inflammation if you have an inflamed gut. You want to make sure too that detox pathways are clear. So really supporting the liver, making sure that you are going to the bathroom every day so that you're able to get rid of the toxins. And then really get support to figure out what's driving inflammation. Is it a gut issue? Are you dealing with mycotoxins? Like what is it that's going on? If you've been exposed to mold or, things like that, then that can cause your body to really like just live in that inflammatory state. And it makes it really
Mhm.
hard to heal. And that's what Rebecca and I love helping women figure out is like, well, what's really driving these issues? What do we need to be
Yes.
looking at? Um, Bottom line is PCOS does not have to be a life sentence. If you are dealing with it, I would highly recommend that you get help to find some root cause answers to that because I am living, breathing, walking proof that it doesn't have to be forever. This is not something that you have to just suck it up and deal with for the rest of your life. There are plenty of ways to get to the root of what's going on um, and support your body with that. So
Absolutely.
obviously you're free to
Thank you so much for sharing all of that, Ashley. That was really, really good. And
absolutely.
um, I think that kind of touched on a lot of aspects for hormone
Mhm.
health, not just for women who've gotten the label of PCOS, because it is something that's grown in awareness. Like doctors are diagnosing PCOS now, but 30 years ago, they weren't really doing a great job at assessing women for it. So I think
Yeah,
there's a lot of women in the perimenopause and menopause state that had PCOS, but just don't know it.
yeah,
And because it's such a common condition, I thought that really any age group woman would benefit from learning about this because they could look for the signs like, did I have fertility issues or acne or like excessive hair growth or did I
mhm,
have irregular periods? Just different things that they're like, oh, maybe I had PCOS and I just was never even told that I had
yeah,
that. And this could be affecting my health now. Or another example would be like someone who had gestational diabetes during pregnancy. I think that's something that's a big red flag. And we all look at it as just like a pregnancy problem, but the issue is that you most likely you had some underlying like
yeah,
silent low grade blood sugar issues before during pregnancy kind of exacerbated it. And so afterwards, like it doesn't mean that you're fine. Like I would definitely advocate if it was a client of mine, like, oh, we really want to dive in and dial that up and fix it fully because it affects so many things, so
yeah,
many areas of our health. And I know you just got back from like a conference. I think Callie Means was talking at that conference this
yeah,
weekend. And I know how big they are on blood sugar because it affects our mental health. It affects
mhm,
our inflammation and heart health and like all the things, you
yeah,
know? So this is why it's so much more than just the women who have that label of PCOS. It's
yeah,
much more of a like a broad stroke issue in our country, unfortunately. And yeah, so I think it's a great, great topic for everyone to learn about.
yeah,
And then I did want to bring up, so last week we posted about the talk, and I said add your hormone related questions so we can try to help answer. One of them was, what are some ways to support issues with like anxiety and night sweats? And so I would say the things that we mentioned during this talk about high cortisol and inflammation would be like the things you want to dive into a little bit more. Yes, there's like herbs, like L-theanine and GABA is calming. Um, black go cohosh is so there's certain like popular DIY things that women will try just to kind of help
yeah,
support. But the person who asked the question, I know she's been dealing with mold toxicity, and I know that she has been in that chronic inflammatory vicious cycle for
Yes.
years. And so what I think for her specifically, um, obviously the basics, the things we talked about, but there is a problem that can happen where even though you get out of that moldy environment, your nervous system is it's learned a new pathway. Like there's
Yeah.
pathways in our brains, right? And the more we like function on a certain level of that fight or flight state, the more it's ingrained in our nervous system, in our brain, in our routine, and we become uncomfortable when we're relaxed.
Yep.
Like we have resistance to being
Yep.
calm. And it's funny because I don't mean to like, pick on him at all. But my boyfriend the other day, I was like playing music and it was all like chill music. And he
Mhm.
was just like, okay, I can't take any more chill music. Like I need something more upbeat.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like he leans more towards that like he had just a rougher upbringing and like I think he's got some nervous system like just his baseline is more stress, you know? And I think we all kind of have a little bit of that,
Yeah.
but
I see
when
that with
you're
my husband's family so much.
I
They are all
can't
like,
relax.
oh my God. Well, it's like, you like, oh, everything is too peaceful right now. So I'm going to create chaos. And sometimes like your body will do that too, like without you even realizing, like if you are so adapted to living in fight or flight and then you calm down, like you actually like remove some of that stress. It's almost like your body doesn't know, your nervous system doesn't even know how to handle that. And so it'll just
It
create issues in
it's
your
almost
body
okay,
even.
so what's crazy is it's so ironic because it's like your nervous system senses something's wrong when you're like trying to calm down. So I do
Yeah.
think that for her, having chronic inflammatory conditions, mold toxicity, all this like really traumatic experience of losing materials from her home, having to leave her house, like
Yeah.
very, very high like financial strain from all the remediation, like it's a big deal. So of course it makes sense your nervous system is fried,
Yeah.
right? So you can be taking all the supplements, you can be doing the diet, you can be out of the moldy environment. But like Ashley knows, there are tools, there are methods to retrain your nervous system. So, Robbie, I would like be looking into nervous system regulation support, and we can do some videos on that. I think that would be great. There's breathing exercises. There's free apps you can download that have breathing exercises, meditation
Tapping.
exercises. I think tapping is great, and if it's in the budget for some people to work with an EFT practitioner one-on-one, because then it can be more customized and diving a little bit deeper to that person's needs versus like an app. But these all sound like so simple. It's very, very tempting to disregard these tools and kind of
Yeah.
like underestimate the impact it can have. For instance, I had a client who was dealing with a lot of anxiety, and I mentioned like three different tools. I was like, EFT, heart math, primal trust, like look into these different options, see which one resonates with you. And she tried heart math. And she met with me later on and was like, literally, my anxiety is down by 80%.
Mhm.
Like life-changing for her. Improving her relationships with her kids and her husband and
Yeah.
her performance at work and just like her own relationship with herself. Like it affects that too. And her sleep was better. And so the night sweats can tie back into this issue as well, because anything that's going to mess with your cortisol levels, your stress hormones, obviously hormones are part of it. So
Yeah.
sometimes women benefit from a little bit of bioidentical hormone support with the whole estrogen piece of it, but cortisol plays into this too. And so if you can um, work on this nervous system regulation, you should see that your hot flashes become less severe, less frequent. Um, I said hot flashes, but I meant night sweats.
Yeah.
Um, that should help. And of course, blood sugar regulation, like all the things we mentioned in this call too. So
And
hopefully that
just
helps.
saying no more often too. I like that's one of the things that I tell my clients all the time is like say no to more things because like as women we're kind of ingrained to be like people pleasers and so we tend
Mhm.
to like want to do all of the things for everybody else, but then we end up just constantly stressed because we're taking care of everyone else or we're putting ourselves in situations that maybe we don't want to be in. And that's one of the things, like, I don't think it would have been possible for me to heal my body if I had not set boundaries around things and removed certain people from, like, there are times where I will be like, no, I don't really want to be around those people because they stress me out and they cause a lot of, they're going to cause my nervous system to be dysregulated and it's
Yeah.
not worth it for that event. So I'm going to say no,
Yeah.
So
And a lot of women struggle with that and think that it's selfish. And I always try to ask women, like, well, what would you do for your kiddos? You
mhm,
know, if you know that your kid's gonna like struggle with this situation or this person in their life or, whatever, like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes when you look at it from looking at someone you love versus yourself,
mhm,
oftentimes you would make more sacrifices or have better boundaries for the person you love versus yourself. As a whole other thing that we would want to work on. But yeah, I think that's really important. And another thing too that I will throw in here on that topic is how you were saying like having good boundaries. I think we also forget to apply that to like social media or not just social media, but even like health information. Some
yeah,
of my clients are just constantly absorbing podcasts, Facebook groups, like all the things, newsletters. And it's almost like it's winding up their nervous system too, because they're like, oh my God, I need to worry about this. Oh my God, do I need this supplement? And it's like they feel like they're drowning in all this information and they're desperately like grasping
yeah,
for solutions. Meanwhile, that state of stress is like not helping.
yes,
So there's a balance between keeping up to date, learning new things, but like turning it off, going and taking a walk,
yeah.
doing some breathing, like
If
making a
your
good
health is
meal, putting
becoming
on
a
some good
sense of stress,
music,
yeah.
putting on a comedian that makes you laugh.
Hmm.
Like we got to have balance with that too.
Yeah, yeah. I say that all the time. Like if you are stressing out so much about your health, like if it's becoming a thing that like you can't enjoy life because you're worried about toxins or you're worried about whatever, like well, your health, like you want to get healthy so that you can enjoy life, not so that not to, you don't want to avoid life so that you can get healthy. Like that's just not what it was meant for. So yeah, 100%. There's got to be a balance. Like you can look at all the biohacking things, all the supplements, all of the things in the world. Like honest to God, there's like nothing that is going to be more beneficial than balancing your blood sugar, managing your stress, and lifting some weights. Like that's like do those things. Do those things and then heal the underlying things too. Like if you're so stressed that you need to listen to a million different podcasts and follow a million different people on Instagram, just work with a practitioner and figure out what your body needs so that you can stop worrying about it so much.
Yes. Yeah, there's so many like generic things
Yeah.
set out there and bold things. I swear it's such a marketing hack for people to
Mm-hmm.
like say controversial things just to get people talking on their post.
Mm-hmm.
Very annoying to me. I get why they're trying to do that so that they get followers and stuff, but at the same time I'm like, but what you're saying is very
Yeah.
like a small tiny piece of it.
Right.
It's always more complex than that one bold
Yeah.
statement. There's always exceptions and stuff. So anyway,
Yep.
but yeah, I think that covered everything for today. So
Yeah.
thank you again. That's great.
Absolutely. All
And
right.
reach out to us guys if y'all have any more questions, just comment below and we'll get to those too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I think.